In IFR flying, you will often reach your destination airport from the opposite direction of the final approach course. If ATC does not use their radar to vector you to the final approach course, you have to turn around in order to get lined up properly on the final approach course. And you turn around using something called a procedure turn. A procedure turn is simply a standardized way of making that course reversal. Standardization increases safety because you know what you're supposed to do each time in order to stay within airspace that is protected from obstacles and other air traffic. So let's take a look at this approach to Lancaster Fairfield County Airport in Ohio and see what a procedure turn actually looks like. In the center of the plan view is a little barb here. It points away from the airport on the localizer, and then it angles to the northeast. And you'll know whether or not a procedure turn is allowed on a particular approach by looking for this barb symbol right here. For this procedure turn, you would fly eastbound or outbound on the localizer course on a heading of 100 degrees. That 100-degree heading is shown here just right of the procedure turn barb and also shown down here in the profile view. So you fly that 100-degree heading for 1 minute or 2 miles after passing the outer marker. Then you turn left off of the localizer course, and the heading you fly is shown here, 055 degrees. You fly for 1 minute, then you make a right turn around to a heading of 235 degrees, and you come back and intercept the localizer course. And at that point, you track the localizer 280-degree course, cross the Kaiser locator outer marker at or above 2,700 feet, and then fly the final approach segment. Now, you are not allowed to do a procedure turn. It is not authorized unless the approach chart shows a procedure turn barb or symbol like this. You see, there's situations where a procedure turn would not be safe because of obstructions in the area. Now, when you are flying a procedure turn, the FAA wants to make sure that you do not get tangled up with obstructions or with other aircraft. And one way to do that is to limit the speed that you're flying while you're doing that procedure turn. So when you're in a procedure turn, the maximum speed you can fly is 200 knots indicated airspeed. And that may seem like an impossibly high figure to worry about. But as you move up to more complex aircraft, you're going to find that it becomes a real consideration. Now let's take another look at the profile view and see what additional information it tells you about the procedure turn. The procedure turn starts from the locator outer marker, the LOM CASR, and you fly outbound on a course of 100 degrees. Notice the note up here that says remain within 10 nautical miles. Your procedure turn must be completed within that distance limit, 10 nautical miles. You are not allowed to go any further from the LOM than that. Now, possible ways to determine your distance, if they're available, are to use DME or GPS, or you can time it, although it's not as exact. But you want to make sure that you stay within that distance limit so that you stay within the protected airspace. Procedure turns are used for course reversal, but they're also often used to lose altitude as you set up for the approach. And that's why the arrow slopes down and shows you descending to an altitude of 2,700 feet in the procedure turn. You have to complete the procedure turn and then cross the LOM, the locator outer marker, inbound at or above 2,700 feet. All right, now take a look at the localizer DME approach to runway 21 at Portland, Oregon. let's assume that you've passed the Battleground VORTAC and you're coming out on this feeder route, which is the Battleground 054 radial to Creek intersection on the localizer course. Feeder routes give you a transition from the en-route structure, the airways, to an initial approach fix. Let's assume you currently have an assigned altitude of 7,000 feet, and as you approach Creek intersection, the controller says, cleared for the approach. The question is, when can you descend to the procedure turn altitude? Well, coming in on this feeder route, you will need to do a procedure turn to get lined up on the localizer inbound. And the procedure turn symbol right here starts at Creek intersection, our initial approach fix. The usual rule is that you descend to your procedure turn altitude when you have crossed the fix where the procedure turn begins and are established outbound to start that procedure turn. Now, this question is not tricky, but this case is a little bit special. Because you're on a feeder route, you can descend, once you're cleared for the approach, to the minimum altitude published on it. The minimum altitude on this feeder route is 5,700 feet, and you can begin descent to it as soon as you've crossed the Battleground VORTAC and received your approach clearance. If you drop down into the profile view on the right side of it, you'll see your procedure turn altitude is also 5,700 feet. But in this case, since you're on the feeder fix route, you can start a descent to the minimum altitude depicted for that route segment as soon as you want and have reported leaving 7,000 feet. It just happens that here, the minimum altitude for the feeder route and the minimum altitude for the procedure turn are the same. If the minimum altitude on the feeder route had been something higher than 5,700 feet, say 6,500 or something, you could not go below that feeder route altitude until you passed Creek intersection outbound on the localizer. So if you come across a question like that, don't think of it as tricky. Think of it as special.